If your ego is too big and you think that you know everything, you will fail. That's the biggest thing I'd say is be humble. Be thankful that you're in a position. I'm not tell anyone that I'm not the greatest salesperson in the world. I'm just, I will listen to people. I will take feedback. I'm passionate about what I do. My background when I was at EMC, I was part of the commercial division at EMC. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Degnan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Snowflake.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Team Selling Podcast. Chris, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm super excited for this conversation to hear your thoughts about your background in sales, really growing as an individual contributor up until being the CRO of Snowflake, the whole journey, your thoughts about AI at the moment in sales organizations, and also how you see the future. So thank you so much for joining this podcast. Let's kick off with a little brief introduction about yourself and the trajectory that you did in Snowflake.
Well, hey, Jonathan, thanks for having me, and glad to be here. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Degnan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Snowflake. I started, almost 11 years ago in November of 2013 as the Director of Sales at Snowflake. And when the Director of Sales, that really was just me, myself, and I in the sales group at Snowflake. And we had no website, and I was in stealth mode. Prior to that, I had been in sales leadership jobs and individual contributor jobs at EMC, and then I left EMC only to get acquired by EMC again, and that's kind of my midlife crisis, is to decide to choose Snowflake, and thankful that my wife let me do that because it was a huge risk, and obviously it's paid off. So again, when I started in 2013, we didn't even have a CEO. Our acting investor, or really our only investor, Mike Spicer, had convinced the founders that it was time to hire a salesperson. And so the founders were, and the rest of the engineers, I was employee 16-ish, 13 to 16, depending on how you look at the numbers. But and they were unsure of why they needed a salesperson because there was really no product to sell. And so I joined when no customers had even touched the product, and started to get people to try it. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey at Snowflake. And now I'm still the Chief Revenue Officer. I'm I guess 4 bosses in. I've had Mike Spicer, Bob Muglia, Frank Slootman, and now Sridhar Ramaswamy as the CEO. So it's been a wild journey.
Wow, it's such a unique journey, really, because coming from the background of sales, you always hear that there are different people to do different jobs, and the 0 to 1 person isn't necessarily the person to be the CRO of a multi-billion-dollar public company. So how do you feel like your growth trajectory, your day one job isn't what you're doing today? Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
I always tell, companies, people always want my advice. They want me to be an advisor or whatever it is to their company. And I think what I would say to CEOs and founders, what was incredibly helpful for me, and one of the key decision criteria for me to even join Snowflake, was because there was no acting CEO and Spicer was kind of our part-time CEO, I knew that in the future there would be another CEO. So one of the things that I asked Mike for was a board member who was a sales leader. And he asked me specifically, well, who would you suggest? And I said, well, at the last company that I was just at, John McMahon was on the board. And so someone like John, he's like, well, I know John. And I kid you not, literally the next day he put John on the board. So why was that helpful is, number one, is John is, a legendary sales leader, very good at his job, very self-aware. And he was helpful not only to me, incredibly helpful to me, but also incredibly helpful to Bob Muglia, our first real CEO, in guiding through that course of growth that we were in. So, Bob is the one who promoted me to VP of Sales. Bob is the one who promoted me to Chief Revenue Officer of Snowflake. But there's zero chance Bob would have done that without John's advice. And he would go to John and say, is Chris doing a good job? Is he doing that? Whatever. And the advice I would give to everyone that aspires to do what I'm doing is, number one, if you are going to go to a startup as early as I did, I would demand that the founder, CEO, whoever it is, have some sales leader as an advisor. Maybe not a board member, maybe an advisor. I would say that's incredibly helpful, that the founder and CEO, they respect. Because if they say, oh, sure, I'll have this person, but then they don't respect them, they won't take their advice. And then to that leader, that salesperson who's joining as the first person, you have to always be open to feedback. And, even to this day, like even now, I get feedback from other people that I take quite seriously, whether it's my boss. I view it as like, when I give advice to my brother, who also is the head of sales of a company that I was advisor to. But when I give advice to him, sometimes he's like, I don't want to hear your advice, Chris. But yet he internalizes it and he acts on it in his own way. And I would say the same with sometimes when Sridhar, my new boss, tells me to do stuff, my knee-jerk reaction is like my brother. Hey, shut up, Sridhar. And I don't say that to him, but that's how I feel sometimes. But then I think about it and I'm like, well, his advice was quite good. And I think that's the advice I'd give to people is if you think you know everything, you're going to fail. And if you think that, everything that you're doing is perfect, you're wrong. And I'd say that, like, even to this day, there are things that I'm screwing up right now at Snowflake, and I am super open to feedback from other people, whether they're people that work for me, whether they're peers of mine, that there are things, Chris, that you need to fix. And that's something that's just a perpetual thing. And you're never, as they say, never stop learning, never stop being curious, never stop being open to feedback. And I would say those are the critical things to being successful in a role like this, at least for me.
No, it's so inspiring to hear you being so open about the need to also receive feedback, and no one really got it figured out. And every day it's kind of like a new learning, even for leaders such as yourself. Maybe you can give like an example out of the whole trajectory for you at Snowflake. Where was like the place that you really felt that you needed to step up, or even need advice, that you needed like some more guidance throughout this whole astronomical growth that Snowflake experienced and still experiencing?
One of the pieces of advice that I got from a sales leader at EMC was find someone that doesn't work for you that you can get feedback from. And so when I was starting at Snowflake, there was a person who actually recruited me out of Snowflake, and his name's Chad Peets. And Chad, he didn't work for me other than I did hire him as a recruiter, but he wasn't an employee of Snowflake. It was, he's a contractor. And he would give me some pretty harsh feedback through time. In fact, to this day, he still does. He's a close friend, and he's not afraid to tell me where I'm screwing up. And there are times when, if I think about what they looked for and why they promoted me from VP of Sales to Chief Revenue Officer, Chad was an integral part of that because he was helping me. One of the things that I needed to do was hire a head of Europe, which I actually ended up hiring on my own, but then hiring a head of North America, building a sales model that was effective. All of these things, these were things that I had to go out and elicit feedback from people like Chad or John McMahon. And so, and if I screwed them up, which there are things I screwed up. So I hired someone to run North America, and he was quite good operationally. And so I kind of was like, oh great, this guy's way better than I am operationally, but what I wasn't listening to is how he was treating others, and that also can be cancerous in an organization. So while we hired a great operational leader to run North America, there was an issue, a cultural issue that I had created by empowering him. And so there are also, when Slootman came in and said, dude, there's a problem in North America, I had to go fix that. And it's one of those things, like, because someone is good, you said it, like you could start off in 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, whatever it is. It's a different job every single time. And sometimes the people with you grow and sometimes they don't. And that's the kind of candidly the depressing part of the job, because especially early on, you're building these. I mean, it's like a passion project, and you probably know this better than most. Is you're in the middle of that right now, building. Yes, and so it's like you're here, you're building, and as you grow, there are going to be changes. You're not going to know as many people. You're not going to know their family history. You're not going to know, they're not going to be necessarily friends of yours or whatever it is. And some of these people will not scale with the company. And that's the hardest part of the job, because, you can tell them, hey, you know what, you should stay here, but you're not going to be this VP, whatever the job is.
And you're honest in these one-on-one conversations? Like, it's something that you are sharing? Is that something that you think for yourself and you won't share? Like, curious to hear how you manage these conversations, if at all, or it's just like a thought that you're not discussing.
I've done everything, all of the above. I've kept it to myself and then fired people, which is not great. I've said to people, look, I'm moving you into a different job, because there's someone else that I want to put in your job. You should stay here. Which, guess what? That doesn't work either. And so when you're open with them and you say, look, I'm going to bring someone in over you, they try to accept that, but that doesn't also work.
Managing people and managing orgs is definitely difficult.
And like Slootman has this phrase that he uses. He says, when there's doubt, there's no doubt. So if you in your gut think that something is not working, product wise, people wise, whatever, don't wait. Frank would always say, I'm old, I'm going to die soon. Make a decision quickly. And he was right. So there are times when I've hired senior leaders, and I've that worked directly for me, and I've fired them within 3 to 4 months because they were a cultural disaster, misfit, just not the right fit. And those things happen, but you have to own that. It's your fault. It's a disappointment to that person. It's a disappointment to you. But at some level, you owe the company to do the right thing, the shareholders to do the right thing. That's how you should act. It's very hard, and that's the impersonal part of corporate.
You're getting paid to do the hard decisions in the end.
Yeah, it's not, and I lose sleep over it every time. I mean, it's something that I still to this day do not like. I hate, actually.
So on that note, I'm curious to hear one go-to-market decision that you took when Snowflake was already an established business that you're especially proud of. One playbook that you implemented, one decision, what led you to that decision, and what was it?
So my background when I was at EMC, I was part of the commercial division at EMC. So EMC had the large enterprise and the commercial. And the commercial was kind of mid-market customers. And you're very much in a velocity organization at EMC. And so I learned, I did a lot of transactions. I sold to a lot of customers. And that is kind of what I like to do. And so I learned that behavior for sure at EMC. And then I brought the behavior that I learned to Snowflake. And the thing that, a lot of people have a misperception, especially like if you're selling enterprise software, that, hey, you're a startup, you want to go hire someone who has relationships, with CXOs. And I always say that relationships only get you one meeting, maybe. People think they have good relationships with CIOs, whomever. No, man, they can get one meeting. But if you're a chief information officer, a head of sales, and that person gets that meeting and wastes your time or tries to convince you to do something that is not what you want to do, you'll ignore them. And so the thing that a lot of sales leaders kind of fall in love with is, especially early on, is you go, hey, I'm going to go hire that person who's done 5 years of 110% of their quota, 150%, 200% of their quota. They've been making $500,000 a year. If you're a small-ish company, if you're doing $50 million in revenue, that person who's been making $500,000 a year, they've been living a lifestyle that is based on that $500,000 a year. And they are in a situation where if all of a sudden you cut their salary in half or more, and you say, well, it's all about the equity, it won't matter. And they don't like to go out and prospect. So one of the core things that I focused on was hiring velocity sellers from day one. So hunters. And that's really important, is you start looking for those people that are more early on in their career, have something to prove, and are getting up every day and focused on it. So like one of the things we did is we had, every sales rep had the expectation of you had to go on 8 sales calls a week, 2 net new business meetings a week, and you had to open up in a fiscal year 8 new logos, 8 new customers before you could get to your accelerators. Those were kind of the core fundamentals of Snowflake. And that, customer acquisition, market share to this day is still a huge thing for Snowflake because our competitors are some of the largest companies in the world who have, it's Google, Microsoft, and Amazon who are also our partners, and people come to them. Right? It wasn't that way for Snowflake. People weren't saying, hey, Snowflake, why don't we do business with you? It was, no, man, like we have to go and kind of push our way in and fight. And that's what you're looking for, not the person that's like the relationship salesperson. Those days, in my opinion, are gone in general. But that was kind of a core fundamental, thing for me is hiring velocity sellers who had something to prove, who know they have to go on a bunch of sales calls every single week.
Yeah, totally resonates with what you said about AWS. As you know, I came from AWS, and I think that your context that you also need to hire the right people at the right timing and also their right timing in their careers totally resonates. Cool. Shifting gears now to speak a little bit about AI. We're almost 2 years in with this whole AI revolution. Super curious to hear what's your take? How do you see AI in general? Did you implement some AI tools in your go-to-market stack? How do you see this?
One of our early investors in Snowflake is a venture firm called Wing. Wing hosts this annual event, and last year I went to the event because they had a bunch of speakers on AI, and I wanted to learn about it. The thing that resonated to me the most was that what AI is going to do is automate a lot of tasks. The task automation is really the huge benefit, and there's all sorts of use cases. And what we're starting to see at Snowflake is we have insurance companies who are using our AI to automate call center recordings. Or, hey, we have insurance companies that are saying, hey, I can figure out who can qualify for a policy a lot faster using AI. Like those are the types of automations. For us, so one of the things that in the real use case for me is I have a boss who likes to document everything. And then I mean everything. Like there's every meeting, someone is supposed to take meeting notes. I'm a huge user of Zoom. We standardize on Zoom. Zoom uses our platform as well. But one of the feature sets that I was an early adopter for, because I hate taking notes.
Who likes to take notes?
Right. And so Zoom has an AI companion that you can actually record the notes, and it's getting better and better and better and better. So initially it wasn't so good, but I kept sticking with it. And now my CEO gets probably more accurate notes that he will read. He's an intellectual that I don't even read, but I kind of summarize, go through it and send it off to him. So it's been really helpful. So I think AI is wonderful. I think for us at Snowflake, we focus on making sure you have all your data in a single place that you can get access for AI. But I think there's a real automation, like, you and I have talked about the future for Yes. And there's a ton of things like at the point of data collection where the rep is having a conversation with a customer, there's probably so much that a sales rep could miss. And then can you train the sales rep to do, if you have that recording, or if you have that AI that says, oh, this sales rep missed this cue, or here's a competitive cue that they kind of missed, or something like that. There's a bunch of stuff that I think AI will help make our sales reps more effective, train better, all of these things. I think there's just a neat opportunity in helping sellers become more efficient.
Yeah, totally. And one thing that's always amazes me is that people have like such strong feelings about AI. There's the camp that thinks that AI will automate everything. On the other hand, you have the camp that says AI is just hype. I'm actually somewhere in the middle. There are areas where AI is substantially better than humans collecting a lot of information, which human SDR or AE likes to go through multiple tabs to collect all the information to personalize an outreach. So that's like an area where I see data and AI stronger, but definitely not. I don't see AI replacing really the enterprise process of selling to a different company. When you're talking about enterprise sales, there are so many people also involved within your own company, not only with stakeholders outside with the prospects company, but also within your company. So I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle there.
I totally agree. I mean, I think, right now the hype around AI is wild. And when you go and talk to some of these companies that are creating language models and all this other stuff, their valuations are sky high. But then when you go in and you find out what's your revenue model, there is none, right? So like there are a bunch of really crazy smart people that are creating them. So you're like, well, how are you going to make money? And they're like, well, we'll figure that out. I think if you're a CFO, and this goes back to like the foundation of Snowflake, is when I started at Snowflake, the thing that we centered around was we were going after the cloud data warehousing market. Now we go into much more than just data warehousing, but focusing on an existing market with an existing budget that has existing value is incredibly helpful, because instead of you go to a company and you say, hey, I'm going to go create a new market. Well, okay, but does the CFO care about that new market? Will the CFO's budget, will they give you money? Because if not, you then have to go, and your sales cycle is probably 24 months, because you're going to have to go and create a whole value prop around why your technology is great. But if you have an existing market where people are spending money already, that is so helpful, because you can say, I can go target that, and you can help with the velocity sale. That's kind of my thing. I think AI is somewhere in between. I think CFOs are looking for where the AI can help, and there are a ton of areas that it can help, but they're very cautious. And especially in large enterprise, I'm seeing they're very cautious. There's super exciting opportunities in AI. We're starting to see some of our early adopter customers do really neat things around it. But yeah, it's still early to figure out. I don't think the hype is quite what it is. Hype is not actual reality. That's okay. It's a neat technology that will have impact for sure.
It's still early days to see where there's the big ROI and where it's just a hype. So one of the most interesting things that you mentioned in previous podcasts is your thesis about customer success as a role, as a thesis. Can you share your thoughts about this? And I have several follow-up questions about that.
Look, when I didn't own customer success at first at Snowflake, but when Frank Slootman became the CEO, he put professional services org as well as the customer success org under me. And what I then went and he's like, look, it's costing us $3 million a year and it's going to grow substantially. So go figure out if that's needed. And so I went in and I said, well, what do you do as a customer success rep? Like, what's your job? And, the makeup of the customer success org at Snowflake at the time was really around showing people the community, the Snowflake community, the documentation. Oh, here's where you can take training. And I was like, well, geez, like, okay, how, that's not enough to continue to build that organization. Can you be a sales engineer? Well, and then I had the SE team look at them. No, they couldn't be a sales engineer. Can we make them sales reps? No, they couldn't be sales reps. So I'm like, for what we were doing, customer success. And by the way, some people view in the traditional SaaS world, customer success people as renewal reps. But our renewals some of them are $100+ million contracts. I'm not having someone do $100 million renewal. Not like that's an inside sales rep that is a pseudo salesperson. That's not happening either. So, I had to think through what I wanted. So look, in all reality, I think what customer success is the entire company has to be focused on customer success. There are people like, we have a professional services team. That team drives implementations, drives consumption for the customer. That is our version of customer success. It is a paid for it. That is not a negative margin business. That is a single digit margin business. So it's not super profitable for us, but it drives the right behavior for our partners, for our customers, and customers pay for education and services around doing data migrations and stuff like that. So that's my version of customer success. It's not that necessarily there's a lot of people that have made wonderful careers in customer success. So I don't want to be like, hey, you suck. For me and Snowflake, that wasn't for us, is what I'd say.
So how the go-to-market motion works? So you have like an account executive bringing a net new customer, and they continue working with the customer up until what point?
Well, just this fiscal year, I talked about how, early days, each sales rep had 8 new customers that they had to open up every year. This year, 35% of our sales team is on new logo acquisition only. Now, they keep the customer for that fiscal year. At the end of that fiscal year, they can make a decision. Do they want to stay?
They make the decision?
Well, it's a combination. It's like, what career path do you love the acquisition life, or do you want to maintain those relationships that you built? Because, there's a capacity issue. A sales rep can't really handle, depending on the size of the customer, sometimes it's 10 customers, sometimes it's 5 customers, sometimes it's 1 customer. But there's only so much capacity that a sales rep has to actually manage an account. That sales rep, may want a career to say, hey, I built these relationships. I want to then go with them through my career and stay managing that account. If they're going to go that path, they're going to go into consumption only quota the following fiscal year. They can stay with those customers. If they want to stay in the acquisition, great. They do have to drop them, and those customers go to an account management team. It's an upsell versus new logo. That's really the way I look at it, is new logo, upsell. The hardest part of Snowflake's job, seller's job, is opening up that new logo. So our new logo acquisition comp plan is quite lucrative. It's a really aggressive comp plan because that's important. Market share is important.
Yeah. So what's the logic behind not having a team that's solely focused on bringing the net new logos?
What's the logic of not having that?
Yeah.
I do. I have that. So I have a team solely focused on new logo acquisition. In fact, that is pretty core to what we do, and it's really important that you have that. So when I say we're still growing at 30% year over year, like we're a fast growing company, and so I'm still hiring. I'm hiring a ton of people, and so this is like, hey, come and acquire new logos. You can continue to do that in perpetuity. You can be a sales rep, a sales leader in the acquisition team, and we will have a job. We love those people. But if you want, you can also take a different career path and take those customers with you and be account managers while we hire new people, to be acquisition reps. So it's really up to the pick your career path type thing, and there's multiple options. But the acquisition team is so critical that that works quite well for us. And in fact, we kind of veered away from that for a little bit, and we've reinstalled that, and that's a big deal for us for sure.
Interesting. And is there an option for someone to start as the consumption-based quota person at Snowflake, like directly to that? Or if you're a seller at Snowflake, at the moment, you need to start on the acquisition part?
So for us, if you're like a college graduate, like the career path that that we've created at Snowflake, and you want to get into sales, is you start off as a sales development rep, which the SDR team, which is just the meeting setters, they sit in marketing. Then if you can take a career path into sales from there, where they do sales training, etc., then you get into the inside sales team. And the inside sales team, there's 2 components. There's an acquisition team, and there's account managers in that team. You can then, over time, progress from inside to the field, and then from the field into leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the career path that we have. And then, do we hire people externally into existing account bases? Absolutely. We have some of our largest accounts. We have $100+ million customers. It requires more than one person on that team. So we might hire someone who knows that account really well, has sold to them prior, and we have a global account manager that's an existing installed customer, we will do that. And it just depends on that. So you can come in externally as managing an install base. You can come in earlier in your career as an acquisition rep. My background, I love new logo acquisition. If I was a sales rep at Snowflake, I'd probably be in that group. That's
Me too. I love the hunting part. So taking the note on landing these very big accounts, when you are trying now to take on a very big account, new logo account that could be impactful for Snowflake, is the rep working together with additional people internally in trying to bring that account? Are they trying to do it alone? Do they sometimes even involve you in trying to crack that big account?
Look, my philosophy is we win together and we lose together. Selling is a team sport, and I think from our perspective, we have a focus on going after the global 2000. So the G2K is important. In fact, we report those numbers to Wall Street on how many G2Ks we've acquired every quarter. And so the G2Ks, their sales cycles are generally longer. They could be 18 to 24 months to get into the account. Very infrequently do we go in and do a multi-million-dollar deal as a new logo. It's our average land is something like $46,000. Our land is typically a pilot to production. That's really what we focus on, is find a use case and land, because you might have other data platforms, data things you're using. We're going to show you why Snowflake's really good in this use case. And so that's the coaching that I give to everyone when they start. We have one of the world in marketing, my peer in marketing is Denise Pearson. She's created a world-class marketing team. They have a process around account-based marketing that is awesome. So we go to the sales rep and say, here are the tools around ABM that you can use. You create custom campaigns to that customer, and really help, kind of generate demand. We have a sales development rep that is helping them also call into the account. We have sales engineers. There are relationships that, a venture capitalist might have. Like, we lost a deal recently in Israel that I reached out to the CEO through a venture person that I know, and I got a meeting. I didn't get the deal, but I got a meeting. And so, look, it's a team sport. I'm willing to go out and put myself out there, just like, our CEO is, just like anyone on the executive team. And we're here to help make the sales team successful. That is really, and make the customer successful. Those are the kind of big things that we focus on as a company.
Super interesting. How does the process look from the single rep going up until the CRO of Snowflake? They probably need to go through multiple people approving that will land in your desk. Can you share some insights about that?
No, I try to be as reachable as possible. If you're a Snowflake sales, so in the welcome message joining Snowflake, I make it so that you have to have my email to link into me on LinkedIn, because I get a lot of solicitation, a ton. I get people asking, the most favorite question for people to ask me is, Chris, love your career. Do you have 15 minutes to give me? Initially, I was super flattered when I was getting those requests.
But now it's every day.
And now I have a family, I have a job. The answer is no, I can't do that. And listen to the podcasts that I've done, or ask me a question that's, insightful. But, to every person that joins Snowflake, I say, reach out to me on LinkedIn, 100% of them, and use my email, reach out, and I will accept your invite. Like, we just had a rep in London reach out to me on LinkedIn. He just said, hey, I'm a new rep in the UK. He reached out to me. I accepted his invite. He then said, hey, he took the opportunity. Hey, I'm going to be at new hire training, this week. And, can I stop and say hello? And I was like, 100%, I will make time for you. And so, I said, send me an email, come by. And we spent 5 minutes talking, but I was like, you are super important. Like, the sales rep is so important to the organization. I will make time for you 100%. And so the answer is, I try to be as accessible as possible. There are times when I can't because my schedule doesn't allow for it. But yeah, it's important that I'm accessible.
Yeah, totally. Leadership from the front. I wanted to really thank you, Chris. We're about to close the episode. Any final insights, comments for people in go-to-market positions listening into this podcast?
You know what? Humility matters. If your ego is too big and you think that you know everything, you will fail. That's the biggest thing I'd say is be humble. Be humble. Be thankful that you're in a position. I would tell anyone that I'm not the greatest salesperson in the world. I'm just, I will listen to people. I will take feedback. I'm passionate about what I do. And if you lose that passion, stop doing it and do something else. And those are the things I say to people. And that would be the advice I'd give to anyone is work with great people, be passionate, be honest, be humble.
Thank you very much, Chris. And in that motivating note, to see someone so senior and so passionate about sales and so accessible, it's really refreshing. And I want to thank you for being on the podcast, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Bye-bye. Ciao.